Proverbs that he who sows tzedakah, charity, has the reward of truth. This means that the attribute of truth is given by God as a reward of sowing tzedakah, charity. And we see a similar thing that God says that you give truth, that God gives truth to Jacob. In other words, truth is something that is coming from God, that he gives to the individual, whether it's to Jacob or through sowing charity. However, we need to understand that, because concerning Jacob, doesn't he have truth on his own? Is it only because God gave him truth from above that he has truth? How do we understand that? So, it's well known that the attribute of Jacob is the attribute of compassion. Abraham epitomizes, he embodies chesed, loving kindness. Yitzchak, his son Isaac, he's the embodiment of gevura, the attribute of severity. Jacob, Yaakov, his divine service was motivated by compassion. So, what does it mean to serve God with compassion? What does that mean? So the compassion that should be aroused in our heart is over the divine spark of our soul. Why over the divine spark? Because it's distant from the light of God when a person goes about in the darkness, the vanities of the world. In other words, when you find yourself kind of not connected in a spiritual darkness, so you can awaken yourself with a feeling of compassion, a compassion for the spark of godliness in your soul that has now been banished from that divine source. So it's not a compassion of, it's a compassion of who you are, such a lofty divine soul that now is gone astray. So how do you get there? How do you get to have this kind of compassion? Well, it'll be based on how much you have an understanding of God and God's greatness. So let's understand that. If you reflect, think about it, even more so, meditate upon how before God everything is nothing, no thing. How do we understand that? What do you mean everything is? Well, we understand that the vitality that we derive is a mere gleam, a reflection of a single letter of God's name. Something that we've spoken at great length, that the spiritual worlds are all coming from one letter, the letter Yud, from the divine name, and only a radiation and reflection of it that animates all of the spiritual realms, Gan Eden, Garden of Eden, souls, angels, a multitude of so many different things that are higher and lower levels. And then this world is animated, this physical world, by the letter Hey. As we explained, the distinction between the Yud and the Hey, Yud is the soul of speech. It is the form of speech, which form comes from lips saying the letter pei, that's got form, or shin, right? The teeth. That's where the form or the soul of the creative force of God comes from the letter yud. And then there is the breath, which is the body. Soul versus body, form versus matter. The breath, which is matter, which is the body. The letter He that creates this world. And it's just a mere reflection then of the essence of God that is then coming into this world to create this and the spiritual world. Let's give an example. A person's name, for example, is not the essence of the person. It's a mere reflection of the individual, right? Kind of distinguishing one person from another. The same way the divine name is merely a reflection of the essence, but it's not the essence, right? So you have the essence of God, you have the name of God, and then you have a letter from the name, and a mere reflection from that is what animates this world. In greater detail, that you have combinations of letters that create the difference in time, past, present, and future. In other words, various combinations. It begins with one letter, but then as it comes into Malchus, into the word, that word now becomes a combination of various letters that become conduits of life-giving force that come from the divine attributes of God. Something that we explain in the second part of Tanya at great length. But that's only the name of God, a letter of the name, an attribute which is a mere glimmer of that, that is the vitality that becomes a word, combinations of making different words, that it becomes the vital force of everything in creation. But as for the essence of God, He has not changed. He's not a combo of names, different letters, different names in the creative force, right? There's no change, not in higher worlds, lower worlds. He's more here, he's less here. No, He's present in the higher worlds, in time and space, equally. No distinction at all. So how is He remain completely unaltered, unchanged, despite the fact that there's a whole universe of creation? Because all of that before Him is utter no thing. It's nothing. Take a single letter from my speech. Hey, that's one letter, right? Now imagine, from that one letter, a whole world is created from God. Take that one letter in relative to me. It's incomparable. It's nothing. Me pronouncing hey relative to my power of speech, that I could speak infinitely. Try me. That my power of thought that is never stops. My power of emotion that's beyond language, intelligence that's beyond that. And that's only powers of the soul, rather the essence of my being. One letter is like meaningless, incomparable. And that's in the human condition. Divine condition, God's one letter that he animates all of creation is totally nothing before him. And that's what we say in our prayers on Shabbos. HaMelech HaReimim Levado Mi'oz, that the king who is exalted alone from aforetime. In other words, just as he was alone before he created the world, he's alone now. Not alone that he is the only reality. Nothing else exists. He's exalted and elevated beyond the days of the world. And that life force that we do have now, that one letter that animates, from that one letter, of course, we had the combinations and letters and so on and so forth, but the source is this one letter. That's no thing before him. That's how creation is. Now, that's creation, but that's not me. That's the greatness of God. But you know who I am? You know who you are? An individual has a part of God in them. Not a part of creation. You're not part of creation. Yes, you're in creation. But who are you? A part of God. Ooh. Now we can have compassion. Great compassion. That I have a piece of that God that doesn't change. That is not part of the creative dimension of the world. That isn't part of the creative force of creation, but that's who and what I am. And that part of me is now in a dark, gloomy body, which is called the hide of the snake. For that alone, that God created such an environment for my soul, I should have compassion. And that's without me doing anything. Just the fact of the matter. Wow, we understand that itself. And now that body that is housing that piece of God can become defiled and has become defiled by klipa, by sitter acher, by following the lusts of the body. God have compassion. And if it wasn't for God who would shield us by giving me strength and the might to wage the war over the body's compassion, then I should triumph over them. I wouldn't be able to, even though I have a piece of God in me. But God gives me the strength that I can get over myself, over my desires of the body and the lusts of the body. And this is what it means that we say in prayers, Adenu Zenu Mageni Sheno, He's the master of our strength, the shield of our salvation. Right? So we extol God, the King who is exalted alone from before time and still exalted after creation. And we ask abundant mercies to have compassion on us, on that part of us that's a part of Him. And we affirm that God provides us with the light, hence the strength, that we can overpower and triumph over the body and the passions of the body. Because we have a transcendent power that will allow us to do that, to be able to truly reveal that part of God in me. Whoa. What a verbringen this is. That's the end of today's class, the beginning of chapter, or letter 6 rather. And more to come. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Okay, any questions? Two question marks before you ask a question, so I can clearly see that it is a question. Eugenia. Mentioned that the name of the person is merely an external identification, but doesn't Judaism attach significance to Hebrew names and conduit of divine energy? Yes, very good. Yeah, so right. Well, look what we just said. Very, very correct what you're saying, Eugenia. Is that a name is the vital force of the individual, right? The name that it is called in the Hebrew tongue is its vital force. So it's the combination of the letters, exactly what we spoke about here. So very true. That's the deeper idea of a name. But that's not how we looked on the name before Hasidus explained it. Before Hasidus explained it, you have a name because if you say, hey, you, or, then you'd have 8 billion people turn around if they were all in the same room, right? Or if you said, hey, Jew, so you'd have, 14 million people turn their heads when you would say that, right? So therefore you got to have a name. And Eugenia is like, pretty Eugene. Eugenia is, unique name that distinguishes you from another. Now, of course, if you're in Chabad and you're saying Chaya Mushka or Menachem Mendel, then you'd have, half of the room turn. But the simple idea of a name, is not the vital force. Simple name is like, hey, just a name to be called. And when someone calls you, they're calling you. But yes, you're correct in what you're saying, but that's a deeper idea of what a name is. So when remember, the Alter Rebbe is speaking here as a metaphor to understand what a name is. So we're taking that part of the metaphor. Excellent question. Thank you, Eugenia. Andrew. I thought there was a divine prophecy when your name is... Yeah, okay, again, that's a deeper understanding of a name. Absolutely. Correct. There is a prophecy. But remember, again, we're using name over here as the name of God. Right. This is the name of God. And we're saying from the letter Hey, this world is created, and not just from that letter of the name of God, but the ray of light of it, right? Which is a contraction. So we're giving that as a metaphor to understand that one letter in reference to who I am is incomparable. So one letter of God's name and just the mere reflection of that, the ray of light from that letter, not even the letter itself in its wholeness, just the light that emanates from there in a contracted manner, is the source of this world. Well, comparable to the essence of God, it's no thing. That was the idea, to appreciate how this world is nothing. And yet I have something that's a part of God, that's me. And I allow this world that's nothing to get the better of me, which the body is part of creation, and therefore it has its own agenda, its own desires, its own lusts, and I allow that to control me. Isn't that something to have compassion over? That's the idea. Hope that's clear. Heavy duty. Yeah, again. Yeah, Davida. Yes, yes. But that's not the point here. Let's not lose the focus, folks, of the point. The questions you're asking are valid in the broader picture, but that might suggest that you're not getting the point here. And I want to make sure that that point of the teaching here, right, it's not a contradiction, it's something else. It doesn't exclude something else, but it isn't something else. It is something else. Make sure we get the point here clear. Okay? Amazing. A reminder tonight, 6:30, Torah studies, Eastern Standard Time. You'll be able to join the people here locally. And then 8 o'clock, TRC, Tanya Rabbi Community. And we got lots to do. No, don't worry about going off topic. It's not a problem. The reason I just want to assure that the teaching, because it's a very powerful idea that we just learned. If we apply that at all, and think about that today, once, you'll have a different day. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have an amazing day. Shavuot Tov, a great week.